The empire of Huarin was built on a simple truth. Alphas ruled. Omegas obeyed. Everything else, law, marriage, war, lineage, was merely decoration around that principle. Which was why the court was quiet in a way that felt wrong. 7 princesses knelt in ceremonial silk before the dragon throne, their heads bowed low, their scents carefully masked by suppressants so potent they burned the nose. Incense coiled toward the painted rafters, heavy with lotus and myrrh, meant to signal fertility and divine favor. None of it worked. King Soryeon, Alpha of Alphas, ruler of Huarin, sat perfectly still. His crown was iron and jade, his expression carved from the same stone as the throne beneath him. He did not frown. He did not scowl. That was worse. The high physician cleared his throat for the 3rd time, voice trembling. "Your Majesty, the examinations are conclusive." No one breathed. None of her highnesses carry an air. A ripple passed through the court, sharp, contained, terrified. The princesses stiffened. One swallowed. Another clenched her fist so tightly her knuckles whitened beneath embroidered sleeves. 7 political marriages. 7 kingdoms appeased. 0 heirs. Soryeon's gaze moved over them, one by one. Not with cruelty, but with a distant, assessing calm that made grown men fear execution. "Leave us," he said. The court fled like prey. Only one man remained behind, scribbling calmly on a bamboo slip, as if history itself were not holding its breath. Yoonhae Won, 3rd-rank royal historian, did not look up. "Historian," the king said coolly. "Yes, your Majesty?" Hae-won replied, brush still moving. "You are dismissed." Hae-won paused, lifted his eyes, met the king's gaze without flinching. "Respectfully," he said, tone mild, "this is a matter of imperial succession. It will be written." The temperature in the hall dropped. The king rose. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his alpha presence unrestrained now that the princesses were gone. Power rolled off him like a physical thing. Command, dominance, the promise of conquest. Most Omegas would have bowed until their foreheads bruised. Hae-won merely tilted his head. "You have courage," Soryeon said. "I have ink," Hae-won replied. "It lasts longer." For a moment, just a moment, the corner of the king's mouth twitched. Then he turned away, right carefully. 3 days later, the king rode north. Officially, it was a diplomatic inspection of the border provinces. Unofficially, it was an excuse to escape a palace choking on expectation and failure. The storm hit at dusk. Snow fell thick and fast, swallowing the road, blotting out the mountains, turning the world into white silence. The royal escort scattered to seek shelter, shouting lost to the wind. Soryeon's horse reared, slipping. By the time the king dismounted beneath a crumbling way station roof, night had fully claimed the land. Inside, a single lantern burned, and seated at the low table, boots drying by the fire, was Yoonhae Won. The historian looked up, blinked once, and sighed. "Of course," he said. "It would be you." The king stared. "Why are you here?" "I was sent ahead to examine the provincial archives," Hae-won replied, pouring tea. The roof collapsed. The innkeeper fled. The storm followed. He gestured to the empty room. "Congratulations, your Majesty. You've reached the end of the world." Soryeon closed the door behind him, sealing them in with the wind howling outside. The scent hit him then. Subtle, warm, wrong. Not the cloying sweetness of a palace Omega. Not the controlled neutrality of suppressants. Something quieter. Ink. Old paper. Rain-soaked earth. Soryeon frowned. "You should be wearing blockers." "I was," Hae-won said calmly. "They failed." Silence stretched. Slowly, painfully, the truth surfaced. "You're an Omega," the king said. Hae-won smiled thinly. "Congratulations again. You're ahead of the medical texts. Male Omegas were a myth. A footnote. A joke whispered in academies and dismissed by physicians. And yet, the fire cracked. The storm pressed closer. The air thickened, charged with something neither of them had planned. Hae-won's breath hitched. Just once. His fingers tightened around the teacup. "Don't," he said quietly. "Whatever you're thinking, don't." Soryeon did not move. But for the first time in his life, the Alpha King of Huarin realized something terrifying. This was not obedience he felt. It was want, unbidden, uncontrolled. Outside, the storm sealed their fate. Inside, history held its breath. The storm did not ease. It pressed against the way station like a living thing. Wind clawing at the walls, snow piling high enough to bury the windows, the world beyond reduced to white oblivion. Even if the king ordered it, no escort could reach them now. They were alone. Soryeon stood near the door, cloak heavy with snowmelt, crown long removed. In the dim lantern light, he looked less like a god king and more like a man who had misstepped into something irreversible. Across the room, Yun Hae-won sat rigid, back straight, hands folded too neatly in his lap. His scent had changed. It was subtle, so subtle that no ordinary alpha would have noticed. But Sor-yeon was not ordinary. The air carried warmth now, soft and persistent, like embers hidden beneath ash. It tugged at instinct, at something older than law. "You should lie down," the king said at last. Hae-won laughed once, breathless. "Careful, your majesty." That almost sounded like concern. "I meant it as an order." "Of course you did." Hae-won lifted his gaze, eyes sharp despite the faint sheen of sweat at his temple. "Everything you say is an order. That doesn't make it wise." The king took a step forward. Hae-won's fingers twitched. "Stop," he said immediately. Sor-yeon froze. The silence between them tightened, stretched thin as silk pulled too far. "You are in heat," Sor-yeon said, voice low. "Yes, you are unguarded, unclaimed, yes, and you are telling me to stop." Hae-won swallowed. "I am telling you that if you don't, this will follow us for the rest of our lives." Something flickered in the king's eyes. Not lust, not hunger. Recognition. "You assume I regret my choices," Sor-yeon said. "I assume," Hae-won replied, "that you've never had to live with them." The words landed harder than any insult. Sor-yeon turned away sharply, pacing the length of the room like a caged beast. His rut stirred, answering the Omega's heat with dangerous enthusiasm. He clenched his fists, breathing through it, furious at his own body. "I have buried cities," he said. "I have signed death warrants with this hand. Do not mistake restraint for weakness." Hae-won's smile was tired. "Then prove it." The lantern flickered. Another hour passed. Then another. Hae-won's composure began to fracture, not dramatically, not with tears or pleas, but in the smallest ways. His shoulders sagged, his breaths came shorter. The sharpness of his wit dulled, replaced by a glassy haze that frightened even him. "Why, your majesty?" he murmured at one point, voice slipping. I don't think I can." Sor-yeon was at his side in an instant. He caught Hae-won before he could slide from the bench, steadying him with hands that burned even through layers of cloth. The contact sent a shock through them both. Hae-won gasped. The king stilled. "I won't," he said immediately, harsh with restraint. "I swear it." Hae-won's head tipped forward, resting briefly, accidentally, against the king's chest. The world stopped. The Omega's scent surged, sweet and aching, and Sor-yeon felt something crack open inside him, something terrifyingly gentle. "You smell like," Hae-won murmured, unfocused, "like iron after rain." Sor-yeon closed his eyes. This was a mistake. This was already a mistake. He guided Hae-won toward the pallet, by the fire, movements careful, reverent despite himself. He wrapped him in blankets, hands lingering only long enough to ensure warmth, safety. Then he turned his back. "I'll keep watch," Sor-yeon said. "Sleep." Hae-won laughed weakly. An Alpha King standing guard for an Omega scholar. Someone should write this down. "I would burn the page." "Pity," Hae-won murmured. "It'd make a good tragedy." Sleep came in fragments. When dawn broke, pale and unforgiving, the storm had passed. So had the heat. Hae-won woke with a pounding headache, limbs heavy, memories blurred at the edges. He sat up slowly, blanket slipping from his shoulders. Across the room, Sor-yeon stood at the window, already armored, already king once more. They did not speak of the night. They did not speak at all. When they parted hours later, riding in opposite directions, neither noticed the faint, lingering thread that bound them still, and neither knew that something ancient, something forbidden, had already taken root. Yun Hae-won prided himself on noticing patterns. It was, after all, the reason he'd survived the academy as a low-born Omega pretending not to be one. Patterns in speech, in policy, in lies, which was why, when his body began misbehaving, he noticed immediately. The nausea came first, not the dramatic kind, no swooning, no clutching at the nearest basin, just a subtle revolt every morning, his stomach tightening as if offended by the mere idea of food. Tea tasted bitter, rice smelled wrong, ink, his beloved ink, made his head ache. He blamed the cold, then the travel, then stress. By the second week, denial required effort, by the third, it required talent. Historian Yoon. Hae-won looked up from his desk, brush hovering mid-character. The junior scribe standing in the doorway was pale, eyes darting nervously. "Yes?" The palace physicians have requested your presence. Hae-won smiled automatically. On what grounds? The scribe swallowed. They say it's routine. There was no such thing as routine in the palace. Hae-won capped his ink and rose, spine straight, face composed. Inside, something coiled tight and cold. The examination room smelled sharply of herbs and judgment. The physician, old, respected, and very careful not to meet Hae-won's eyes, pressed 2 fingers to his wrist, then froze. Once, twice. He checked again. The physician said. Hae-won's smile thinned. If you say one more time, I'll assume I'm dying and save us both the suspense. The physician cleared his throat. Your cycles are irregular. They always are. Yes, but this is new. Silence stretched. No, Hae-won said calmly. It isn't. The physician hesitated. Historian Yun, when was your last heat? Hae-won's mind betrayed him instantly. Snow, firelight, iron after rain. He stood. This examination is concluded, he said flatly. The physician did not stop him. King Soryeon returned to the capital to applause. The people loved him. Loved his victories, his decisiveness, the way he carried the empire like a blade pointed outward. They did not see the way his jaw tightened when he passed the Eastern archives. They did not see how his gaze lingered, unbidden, on a familiar figure bent over scrolls, dark hair tied loosely at the nape of his neck. Yoon Hae-won did not look up. He did not bow. That should not have bothered the king. It did. That night, Soryeon dismissed his consorts early. The princesses obeyed gladly, some relieved, some resentful, all painfully aware that his attention had been elsewhere since the northern journey. Alone in his chambers, the king pressed 2 fingers to his throat. The bond was faint, barely there, but unmistakable. An omega. That omega, impossible. Male omegas did not conceive. Male omegas were anomalies, sterile by nature, their heats vestigial at best. And yet, Soryeon closed his eyes, jaw clenched. For the first time in his reign, he did not want certainty. The rumor reached the court before the truth did. It always did. Have you noticed historian Yoon hasn't attended the morning council? They say he fainted in the archives. I heard the physicians were called. And the king, did you see the way he looked at him yesterday? Speculation bloomed like rot beneath silk. Hae-won heard it all and ignored it with practiced ease, until the day he nearly collapsed halfway down the archive steps. He caught himself on the railing, breath sharp, vision blurring. This is getting ridiculous, he muttered. That night, he locked his door and mixed the herbs himself, cross-referencing medical texts older than the empire, footnotes written by scholars long dismissed as mad. Male omegas, moon-blooded. Rare cases, he read until dawn. When he finally looked up, hands trembling, there was no denying it. The signs aligned too neatly. The timing was unforgiving. Hae-won pressed a hand to his abdomen, not gently. No, he said aloud, absolutely not. The child did not answer. The bond pulsed faintly, warm, infuriatingly calm. He laughed then. Soft, hysterical, edged with disbelief. 7 princesses, 7 royal wombs, and the empire's heir had chosen him. The king summoned him the next morning. No explanation, no ceremony. Hae-won arrived pale but composed, robes hiding everything they could. Soryeon dismissed the attendants with a gesture. They stood alone. You are unwell, the king said. I'm busy, Hae-won replied. The king's eyes darkened, not with anger but something far more dangerous. You will answer me. Hae-won met his gaze, something wild and resolute settling in his chest. No, he said quietly. I won't. For a long moment, the Alpha King of Hwarin said nothing. Then, slowly, he smiled, and Hae-won knew with absolute clarity that the worst was yet to come. The door closed behind the last attendant, with a sound that echoed far too loudly. Yoon Hae-won stood at the center of the king's private audience chamber, hands folded inside his sleeves to hide their tremor. The room was intimate by palace standards. No throne, no audience dais, just a low table, a brazier, and windows that looked out over the inner gardens. A room meant for honesty. That alone made his pulse spike. Soryeon did not sit. He circled Hae-won slowly, like a predator assessing not prey, but a variable. His presence pressed down, heavy and inescapable, alpha dominance no longer leashed by ceremony. You've been avoiding the physicians, the king said. I've been doing my job, Hae-won replied. You nearly collapsed in the archives. So did the roof last winter. It recovered. The king stopped in front of him. Up close, the scent was undeniable now, faint, controlled but threaded with something new, something alive. Soryon's jaw tightened. You smell different. Hae-won exhaled slowly. Then you already know. The silence that followed was absolute. When Soryon spoke again, his voice was quieter. More dangerous. Confirm it. Hae-won lifted his chin. Bring a physician and this room will never be safe for me again. Soryon studied him for a long moment, then turned sharply toward the door. Hi, physician, he called. Hae-won's nails bit into his palms. The physician arrived trembling, eyes flicking between the king and the historian. Tests were prepared. Ancient methods, modern instruments. Silence thickened with every breath. No one spoke until the physician staggered back, face drained of color. Your Majesty, he whispered. This is unprecedented. Soryon did not look at him. State it. The physician swallowed hard. Historian Hae-won is carrying a viable pregnancy. The words fell like a blade. The physician fled. The door closed. The world narrowed to two men and an impossible truth. Soryon turned slowly. Hae-won braced himself for rage, for denial, for command. Instead, the king laughed, once, sharp, disbelieving. 7, Soryon said. 7 princesses, 7 kingdoms, years of planning. He looked at Hae-won, not with fury but something raw and shaken. And one night he finished. With you. Hae-won's voice was steady. I warned you it would follow us. The king stepped closer. You are carrying my heir. I am carrying a child, Hae-won corrected. Do not reduce me to a vessel. Something flickered in Soryon's eyes. Surprise, then irritation. You would deny the empire. I would deny you, Hae-won snapped, temper breaking through restraint. The empire didn't lie with me in a snowbound ruin. The empire didn't pretend restraint was kindness. The accusation landed hard. For a long moment, Soryon said nothing. Then, measured and deliberate, he spoke. You will move into the inner palace. No. You will be protected. No. You will be recognized. Absolutely not. Soryon stared at him, disbelief edging into something sharper. You think refusal is an option? Hae-won's smile was brittle. I think you're about to learn it is. The court learned within hours. They always did. Whispers raced through silk corridors and behind painted fans, mutating with every retelling. A male Omega, a pregnancy, the kings. The princesses gathered that evening without invitation, drawn by instinct and fear. One wept openly, one stared at her hands, one laughed until she choked. So that's why, murmured Princess Yeonchua, voice hollow. We were never the problem. They looked at one another, not rivals now, but casualties of a system that had never intended to choose them. And somewhere deep in the palace, Hae-won packed a single chest. Books, clothes, herbs. He did not pack memories. Soryon intercepted him at the gate. You're leaving, the king said. Yes, you cannot. I already am. The king's control cracked then, not violently but visibly. You will be made my concubine, he said, voice ironclad. You will bear my heir under my protection. Hae-won turned fully, eyes blazing. Say that again, he said softly, and I will disappear so completely your historians will argue over whether I ever existed. The king searched his face, and found no fear there, only resolve. For the first time since his coronation, Soryon felt something dangerously close to panic. Then what do you want? He asked. Hae-won shouldered his pack. I want, he said, to choose. He walked past the king, and the Alpha King of Hua-rin did not stop him. Not because he couldn't, but because for the first time he didn't know how. Hae-won did not run. Running implied panic. Instead, he left the palace the way he had entered it years ago, quietly, with permission stamped in red ink and a scholar's insignia no one bothered to question. He did not disguise himself. He did not rush. That was his first mistake. By the time he reached the southern quarter, the air had already changed. Palace messengers rode past too quickly. Vendors spoke in hushed voices. A group of soldiers stood at a crossroads where there had never been soldiers before, eyes scanning faces with professional disinterest. The empire was holding its breath. Hae-won adjusted his robe, keeping his posture straight despite the ache in his lower back and the persistent, unsettling warmth beneath his ribs. The bond tugged faintly now, not painful but present, like a thread tied around his wrist and pulled just enough to remind him it existed. Annoying, he thought. He reached the outer scholar residences by dusk. The house was modest. 1 floor. Clay walls. A single plum tree in the courtyard, bare branches scratching at the sky. It smelled of dust and old books and safety. He locked the door behind him. Only then did he sit. Only then did his hands shake. This, he told the empty room, is temporary. The child did not argue. King Soryeon broke 3 centuries of precedent before midnight. He summoned the Council of Succession, a body that had not convened since the last dynasty fell, and did it without consulting the queens, the consorts, or the allied kingdoms. The court erupted. "You cannot legitimize a rumor," one minister shouted. "A male Omega pregnancy defies natural law," cried another. Soryeon listened. Then he stood. "The empire exists because I decide what law is," he said calmly, "and you will all remember that the next time you confuse discomfort with impossibility." The council fell silent. The high physician stepped forward, hands trembling. "Your Majesty, if the child is viable, if it carries your blood, then under the oldest succession codes—" "I know," Soryeon interrupted. "Under the oldest laws, a moon heir, born of a ruling alpha and a moon-marked omega, outranked all consorts, all queens, even treaties bent around them." The king dismissed the council with a single gesture. Then, alone at last, he pressed his palm against the lacquered table and breathed. Hae-won had left, and the absence was loud. The first visitor arrived at Yoon Hae-won's door 2 days later. Princess Yeonhwa did not knock. She stood in the courtyard, hands folded neatly, expression composed in the way only someone raised in a palace could manage. "You're either very brave," she said, "or very foolish." Hae-won sipped his tea. "I'm told it's hard to tell the difference." She studied him openly now, his posture, the way his hand rested unconsciously over his abdomen, the calm threaded with steel beneath his politeness. "So," she said softly, "it's true. Yes, a beat. You didn't steal him," Yeonhwa said. "No, you didn't plan this. No." She exhaled, shoulders sagging just slightly. "Then congratulations. You've done what 7 kingdoms couldn't." Hae-won raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like resentment." "It's relief," she corrected. "If the failure was systemic, then it wasn't us." She hesitated, then added, quieter, "They will come for you." "I know. They will try persuasion first, then fear." "I know. And if that fails," Hae-won's smile was thin, "then they'll try kindness." Yeonhwa laughed, short and sharp. "You really are dangerous." She left behind guards, officially hers, unofficially his. The king noticed. He said nothing. That night, Soryeon stood on the palace balcony, staring toward the southern quarter. "You could command him back," his general said carefully. "I could," Soryeon agreed. "You could declare him consort by decree. Yes, you could make refusal treason." Soryeon turned. "And what," he asked softly, "would that make me?" The general did not answer. Soryeon dismissed him and remained there long after the lanterns dimmed. For the first time in his life, the king understood a truth no strategist had ever taught him. Power taken was fragile. Power given was terrifying. Weeks passed. Hae-won adapted. He adjusted his herbs, altered his routines, learned which foods stayed down and which ones sparked rebellion. He continued his work, writing histories, annotating margins, documenting small truths that would outlive kings. The child grew. The bond strengthened. And one night, as Hae-won sat beneath the bare plum tree, he felt it. A distinct, unmistakable flutter. He froze. Slowly, cautiously, he placed his hand over his abdomen. "There you are," he whispered. The warmth answered. Miles away, King Soryeon woke with his heart racing, breath caught in his throat, hand pressed unconsciously to the same place. The empire shifted on its axis. Neither of them slept again that night. The official declaration came at dawn. It was nailed to the outer palace gates, read aloud in every market square, copied by scribes whose hands shook as they wrote words that would unmake dynasties. By decree of the Alpha King Soryeon of Hwarin, a child conceived of royal blood and confirmed by the high physician, shall be recognized under the ancient succession codes as a moon heir, regardless of the bearer's secondary gender. No name was given. None was needed. The empire understood implication better than proclamation. By noon, the streets buzzed. By evening, foreign envoys requested emergency audiences. By nightfall, someone tried to poison Yoon Hae-won. It was clumsy, almost insulting. The tea smelled wrong. Hae-won stared at the cup for a long moment, then sighed and pushed it aside. "They never start with the clever ones," he muttered. The guard Princess Yon Hua had left him. An older woman with sharp eyes and scars she didn't explain, stepped forward immediately, sweeping the cup into a sealed pouch. "Stay inside," she said. Windows shut. Hae-won obeyed, irritation prickling beneath his calm. Not fear, annoyance. He had been careful, he had been quiet, he had been polite. Apparently that made him expendable. That night the bond flared, sudden, tight, almost painful. Soryeon felt it like a blade between his ribs. The king did not summon Yun. He went to him. No crown, no retinue, no armor, only a dark cloak and a face the court would not recognize if they passed him in the street. The guards stiffened when he arrived. One reached for a blade. Soryeon lifted a hand. "I'm unarmed." Hae-won watched from the doorway, expression unreadable. "You shouldn't be here," Hae-won said. "I know, you've made things worse." "I know." A pause. "Come inside," Hae-won sighed. "Before someone recognizes you and we both regret it." The house felt smaller with the king in it. Soryeon stood awkwardly, as if unsure where to put himself. He looked around at the shelves, the inkstones, the carefully ordered chaos of a scholar's life. "You're not safe," he said finally. Hae-won folded his arms. "Neither are you. That hasn't stopped you. There was poison in your tea. I noticed." The king's jaw tightened. "I should have moved faster. You should have listened earlier." The words were not cruel. That somehow made them worse. Soryeon bowed, not deeply, not theatrically, but enough. "I am sorry," he said, for assuming protection was the same as possession. Hae-won stared. "You don't get to apologize once and call it growth," he said quietly. "People die in the space between assumption and understanding." "I know," Soryeon said. "That's why I'm here." He reached into his sleeve and placed a folded document on the table. "A writ of autonomy," he said. "It recognizes you as an independent court entity, no consort title, no confinement, your residence, your guards, your work, your choice." Hae-won did not touch it. "And the child?" he asked. Soryeon's voice softened. "Will be recognized without claiming you." Silence settled between them, heavy, uncertain. "This doesn't fix everything," Hae-won said. "No," Soryeon agreed, "but it stops me from being your enemy." Hae-won finally picked up the document. "Read it once, then again." "You're learning," he said slowly. The king huffed a quiet, humorless laugh. "I am very bad at it." The second attempt came 3 nights later. This one was quieter, a slipped blade, a shadow that knew guard rotations too well. The assassin never made it past the courtyard. Princess Yon Hua stood over the body, blood on her sleeve, expression cold. "They won't stop," she said. "I know," Hae-won replied. "They're afraid. Good." From that night on, the princesses stopped being bystanders. They began to visit openly, share information, move resources. What had once been a fractured harem became a coalition. Women who had lost political value, now finding purpose in dismantling the system that had discarded them. The court noticed, so did the allied kingdoms, so did the people. They began to whisper a new phrase, the Moon Court. Late one evening, as Hae-won lay half asleep, he felt a gentle, unmistakable pressure from within. Not pain, communication. He smiled despite himself. "Your timing is terrible," he murmured. Miles away, Soryeon paused mid-strategy briefing, breath-catching as warmth flooded his chest. He dismissed the room without explanation. For the first time, he did not wonder whether the child would change the empire. He wondered whether he was capable of changing with it. The third attempt did not come with poison or blades. It came with fire. The southern quarter slept lightly. Scholars rose early, guards rotated often, and rumors had sharpened everyone's instincts. That was why the scream was heard immediately. "Fire!" Hae-won was awake before the word finished echoing. Smoke crawled under the door, bitter and thick. Heat licked the walls. Someone had sealed the outer gate. "Idiots," Hae-won muttered, wrapping a cloth over his mouth as he moved, not toward the exit, but toward the back room where his manuscripts were stored. A mistake born of habit. The roof collapsed with a thunderous crack. Hae-won was thrown hard against the floor, breath knocked clean from his lungs. Pain flared along his side, sharp and blinding, and for the first time since learning the truth, fear eclipsed irritation. Not like this. He curled instinctively, arms shielding his abdomen as smoke thickened. The bond snapped tight. Soryeon woke choking. Not on smoke, but on terror so sudden and violent it left him gasping, heart slamming against his ribs like it wanted out. The bond burned, screaming danger in a language older than reason. He was on his feet before the servants reached the door. "Saddle my horse," he barked. "Now." The general didn't argue. By the time Soryan reached the southern quarter, the street was chaos, buckets passed hand to hand, guards shouting orders, flames clawing up the side of a very familiar house. "Move," the king commanded. No one stopped him. Inside, heat slammed into him like a wall. Smoke blurred his vision, but the bond pulled him unerringly forward, left, then right, then down. "Yun!" he shouted. A cough answered. Soryan found him half buried beneath fallen beams, face streaked with soot, eyes bright with stubborn consciousness. "You're late," Haewon rasped. Relief hit the king so hard his knees nearly buckled. "I'm here," he said hoarsely. "I've got you." He did not lift recklessly. He cleared debris with his own hands, burning skin be damned, until he could pull Haewon free and wrap him close. Haewon clutched his sleeve, fingers trembling. "Don't, drop me," he whispered, breath hitching. "I won't," Soryan said, voice breaking. "Never." They emerged into cold night air to a stunned crowd. The Alpha King, soot-stained and bleeding, holding an Omega scholar like something precious. There was no undoing that image. The physicians worked through the night. Haewon's injuries were not fatal, but close enough to leave the room heavy with what-ifs. Bruised ribs, smoke inhalation, shock. The child was unharmed. When Haewon woke, it was to quiet. Soryan sat on the floor beside the bed, armor discarded, hands clenched together as if holding himself still by force alone. "You look terrible," Haewon murmured. The king's head snapped up. "Don't do that," Soryan said roughly. "Don't speak like that when I almost died," Haewon finished. "That's usually when people take inventory." A silence fell. "I should have moved you sooner," Soryan said. "I thought autonomy meant distance." "It does," Haewon replied softly. "But autonomy doesn't mean isolation." He shifted, wincing, then looked at the king fully. "They tried to burn an idea," he said. "Not just me." Soryan nodded slowly. "And ideas," Haewon continued, "need structure." The Moon Court was founded 3 days later. Not in secret. Not quietly. It was declared on the same steps where the princesses had once knelt. Yoon Hae-won stood at the center, injured, pale, unbowed. Princess Yeon Hwa stood at his right. 2 others flanked him. Scholars, dismissed consorts, lesser nobles, those discarded by the old system, gathered behind. "I will not be hidden," Haewon said clearly. "I will not be owned. And I will not be erased for being inconvenient." The crowd listened. The Moon Court exists to protect the vulnerable, to document truth, and to ensure that no body, Alpha, Beta, or Omega, is reduced to its function. The king stood apart, not above, not beside, witness, not ruler. When the cheers rose, they were not for Soryan. They were for the man who had survived the fire. That night, alone again, Soryan stood in the doorway of Haewon's new residence. Stone, guarded, fireproof. "You stayed back," Haewon noted. "I didn't want to make it about me." Haewon regarded him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. That, he said, was the right choice. The king exhaled, something uncoiling in his chest. Haewon hesitated, then added quietly, "You can stay. Tonight, not an order, an invitation." Soryan stepped inside. Outside, the moon rose, full, bright, undeniable. And the empire, whether it wished to or not, began to change. The palace woke to a problem it could not execute. Yoon Hae-won was no longer a rumor, no longer a liability that could be erased quietly in the night. He had survived fire. He had founded a court. He had allies with names and blades and influence. And worse, the people liked him. They lined the outer streets of the Moon Court with offerings, dried fruit, books copied by hand, charms stitched with lunar symbols. Mothers brought children and bowed, not deeply, not fearfully, but with gratitude. An Omega who had not knelt. An Alpha King who had. The nobles watched from behind latticed windows and felt the balance tilt. Soryan stayed, not officially, not as a declaration. But when night fell, his presence was there. Quiet footsteps in the corridor, the low murmur of guards who straightened when he passed, the subtle easing of tension that came with knowing the strongest blade in the empire stood nearby. Haewon noticed everything. "You don't have to sleep on the chair," he said one evening, propped against cushions, one hand resting unconsciously over his abdomen. Soryan didn't look up. "I'm comfortable. That chair is a lie. A pause. I've endured worse." Hae-won snorted. That's not the same thing. He shifted, then gestured toward the low couch across the room. At least pretend you value your spine. If you collapse, the physicians will never forgive me. Soryeon hesitated, then obeyed. It was a small thing. It felt enormous. They sat in silence for a while, the crackle of the brazier filling the space between them. You didn't ask, Hae-won said eventually. Ask what? To stay. Soryeon's fingers tightened on the edge of the couch. I didn't want to presume. Hae-won studied him, really studied him this time. The man who had once spoken in decrees now measured every word like it might break something fragile. That's new, Hae-won said. I'm trying, Soryeon replied quietly. Hae-won nodded once. I see that. The rebellion did not begin with swords. It began with parchment. A coalition of alpha nobles submitted a formal petition at dawn, sealed with 7 crests. An echo too sharp to be coincidence. They challenged the legitimacy of the moon heir. They cited tradition, biology, divine will. They requested a conclave. Soryeon read the petition in silence. Then he handed it to Yoon Hae-won. Your thoughts, the king said. The room stilled. This was new. Hae-won scanned the document, expression unreadable. When he finished, he handed it back. They want you to choose, he said. Them or me. Stability or change. And you? I want you, Hae-won said evenly, to do nothing. Soryeon blinked. Nothing? Let them talk, let them posture. The more they argue law, the more people see fear. Meanwhile, the moon court keeps functioning. We build legitimacy through action. He paused, then added softly, Don't shield me. Stand with me. The king straightened. Yes, he said. Just yes. That night, Hae-won dreamed. Not of fire, not of blood, of moonlight on water. Of hands, large, careful, hovering, never grabbing. Of a warmth that did not burn. He woke with a soft gasp, heart racing. Soryeon was there instantly. Pain? He asked. No, Hae-won breathed. Just. He froze. Soryeon followed his gaze. There, beneath Hae-won's palm, was movement, small, definite, alive. Hae-won laughed, a shaky sound caught halfway between wonder and terror. You see why I didn't want an audience. Soryeon sank to his knees beside the bed, reverent without meaning to be. May I? He asked. Hae-won hesitated only a moment. Don't make a habit of it, he said. Soryeon placed his hand carefully over Hae-won's. The movement came again. The king inhaled sharply. For the first time, truly, the air was not an idea or a threat or a symbol. It was a life. I will protect you, Soryeon said. Hae-won met his eyes. You don't get to promise that alone, he said. We do this together, or not at all. Soryeon nodded. Together. Outside the moon court, the nobles sharpened their arguments. Inside, something gentler, and far more dangerous, was taking shape, trust, and in an empire built on dominance, it was the most revolutionary force of all. The conclave was announced at sunset, 3 days from now, public, final, irreversible. The nobles would speak, the court would judge. The empire would decide whether Yoon Hae-won was a miracle or a mistake. By the time the doors to the moon court closed that night, Hae-won was exhausted in a way sleep could not touch. Stop pacing, he said without looking up. Soryeon froze mid-step. I'm not. You are, Hae-won cut in. You've worn a path into my floor. The king huffed a short breath and finally stopped, standing too close now, presence heavy, coiled tight like a storm barely leashed. They will try to humiliate you, Soryeon said. Publicly. They'll fail. They will try to bait me. They'll succeed, Hae-won said dryly. You're terrible at restraint. Soryeon's jaw tightened. I'm better than I was. Yes, Hae-won agreed. That's why this is dangerous. He turned then, finally facing the king. Up close, Soryeon looked undone. Eyes dark, shoulders tense, control stretched thin by fear, rage, and something far more intimate. You're afraid, Hae-won said softly. The king did not deny it. I almost lost you, Soryeon said. In the fire, I feel it every time I close my eyes. Hae-won's breath caught, not at the words, but at the rawness behind them. You don't get to cage me because you're scared, he said. I know, Soryeon replied. That's why I'm asking you not to disappear. Silence crashed between them. The bond pulsed. Warm, insistent, traitorous. Hae-won laughed quietly. You're really bad at asking. Soryeon stepped closer. So teach me. The space between them evaporated. Hae-won could feel the king's breath now, hot, uneven, ghosting over his mouth. Every instinct screamed awareness, want, memory of snow and fire and restraint that had nearly broken them both. "This is a terrible idea," Hae-won whispered. "Yes," Sor-yeon agreed, voice rough. "It is." Neither moved away. Hae-won tilted his head up. "Then don't make promises," he said. "Just..." Sor-yeon kissed him, not gentle, not careful. It was hunger held back too long. Mouth crashing against mouth, breath stolen, teeth knocking, heat flaring like it had been waiting weeks for permission. Hae-won made a sound, sharp, startled, and then answered, fingers fisting in the king's robes, pulling him closer instead of away. The kiss deepened, slow, devastating, filthy in its intensity. Sor-yeon's hand came up, bracing at Hae-won's jaw, thumb pressing just enough to tilt his mouth open wider. Control snapped. Hae-won kissed back like a challenge. Biting, breathless, unapologetic. Years of restraint burned away in the space of a heartbeat. The bond roared. Sor-yeon growled low in his throat and broke the kiss just long enough to press his forehead to Hae-won's. "Say stop," he breathed. "Say it, and I will." Hae-won's lips were swollen, breath uneven, eyes bright with something wild and alive. "Don't," he said. Sor-yeon kissed him again, slower this time, deeper, devastating in its intent. Not possession, not dominance, choice. Hands slid, caught fabric, tension, heat, but never crossed the line that mattered. The king shook, like stopping cost him something real. Hae-won pulled back first, chest heaving. They stood there, flushed, undone, staring at each other like they'd just detonated something sacred. "Well," Hae-won said hoarsely. "That complicates things." Sor-yeon laughed, soft, breathless, awed. "I was already ruined." Hae-won reached out, fingers brushing the king's wrist. Brief, grounding. "For the conclave," he said quietly. "Stand beside me." Sor-yeon did not hesitate. "I will," he said, "even if the crown cracks." Hae-won smiled, slow, dangerous, incandescent. "Good," he said. "Let them watch." Outside, the moon climbed higher. Inside, an empire's fate trembled, because two men had finally stopped pretending they didn't want each other. The conclave convened beneath the Hall of Ancestral Moons, a place built to crush dissent with history. Stone pillars carved with the names of Alpha Kings rose toward the ceiling like judgment itself. Moonlight spilled through the open dome above, pale and unflinching, illuminating the circular floor where power had always been decided by who stood tallest. Today it illuminated Yoon Hae-won. He stood at the center of the hall without chains, without veil, without kneeling. Pregnancy softened none of his posture. If anything, it sharpened him. The nobles filled the tiers. Alphas in dark ceremonial robes, betas with calculating eyes, omegas tucked carefully behind their patrons like ornaments. The princesses sat together, no longer scattered, a united front of silk and steel. A murmur rippled through the hall when King Sor-yeon entered, not to the throne, but to Yun's side. The noise died instantly. That was new. "Let the record show," intoned the High Arbiter, "that this conclave has been summoned to determine the legitimacy of the so-called Moon Heir and the standing of Yoon Hae-won, Omega male, within the imperial succession." "So-called?" Hae-won echoed mildly. A few nobles bristled. The Arbiter cleared his throat. "You may speak in your defense." Hae-won inclined his head, then he smiled. "I find it fascinating," he said calmly, "that my body has caused more outrage than 7 failed wombs. Gasps, sharp, immediate. One noble surged to his feet. "Mind your tongue." "No," Hae-won replied, eyes flicking to him coolly. "You've done enough of that for everyone." Sor-yeon did not move, but his presence burned. "You claim impossibility," Hae-won continued, voice carrying easily. Yet the High Physician confirmed viability. "You claim tradition, yet invoke laws written precisely for cases you didn't believe would inconvenience you. A rustle of unease. You fear disorder," Hae-won said. "But what you truly fear is precedent." He turned slightly, just enough to face the crowd fully. "If an Omega chooses, if an Alpha listens, if power bends instead of breaks, then what are you for?" Silence crashed down like a held breath. A senior Alpha Lord rose slowly, scent flaring with challenge. "You would unmake centuries for a scandal," he said. "This is lust dressed as reform." Hae-won laughed. It was soft, lethal. "If this were lust," he said, "I would have been hidden. Silenced, decorated with jewels and excuses." He gestured subtly to Sor-yeon. "Instead, I stand here. Unowned, unbowed, The Lord sneered. And the king? Is he absolved because he learned restraint too late? Every gaze turned to Soryan. The old rules demanded dominance. The new moment demanded something else. Soryan stepped forward. I am not absolved, he said clearly. I am accountable. Shock rippled outward. I failed 7 princesses by treating them as solutions instead of people, the king continued. I failed Yun Hae-won by assuming protection excused control. He looked at Yun then, not claiming, not commanding, choosing. I will not repeat that failure. Hae-won's breath hitched, just barely. The nobles felt it. Then say it, the arbiter pressed. What is he to you? The hall held its breath. Soryan turned fully toward Yun, not touching, not towering. Yun Hae-won, he said, voice steady despite the tremor beneath it, is my equal. The words detonated. Gasps, shouts, outrage, and then quiet. Because Yun smiled, slow, dangerous, brilliant. Now Hae-won said softly, let's discuss succession. The moon heir was declared legitimate by nightfall, not unanimously, but undeniably. Later, long after the hall emptied, after power realigned and grudges were quietly sharpened, Yun stood on the balcony outside the moon court. The city stretched below, alive with rumor and awe. Soryan joined him. You were magnificent, the king said. I was angry, Hae-won replied. That's different. Soryan's gaze dropped to Yun's mouth. The memory of their last kiss lingered like heat under skin. We shouldn't, Soryan murmured. Hae-won turned, stepping close enough that the king could feel him. Then don't command, he said quietly. Ask. Soryan searched his face. May I? Hae-won answered by pulling him down into another kiss, slower than before, deeper, devastating in its certainty. The city watched from below, unknowingly bearing witness to the moment the empire truly changed, not with a crown, but with consent. The city was still roaring from the conclave when the doors of the moon court shut behind them. Silence fell, thick, intimate, electric. Yun Hae-won did not turn around at first. He stood with his back to Soryan, hands braced on the table, breathing hard like he'd just survived a battle, which, in many ways, he had. You stood beside me, Hae-won said quietly. Soryan answered without hesitation. Always. That was when Hae-won turned, and whatever composure the Alpha King had left shattered. Hae-won's eyes were bright, dark with adrenaline and heat, and something dangerously alive. His mouth, still faintly swollen from the balcony kiss, curved into a smile that promised trouble.
You chose me, Hae-won said. Yes, in front of them. Yes, knowing what it would cost.
Soryan stepped closer. I already paid. The bond surged, hot, demanding, hungry. Hae-won closed the distance himself this time. He kissed Soryan like a decision. Hard, deep, no hesitation. Soryan groaned into the kiss, hands coming up instinctively, then stopping, hovering, trembling with restraint. Tell me, he breathed against Hae-won's mouth. Tell me what you want. Hae-won smiled, slow, wicked. You, he said. Undone. That was all it took. Soryan kissed him again, Messier this time, desperate, months of fear and restraint burning off in the press of mouths and heat and breath. Hae-won made a sharp sound as the king backed him toward the inner chamber, fingers gripping fabric like it was the only thing keeping him upright. The door shut, the world narrowed. Clothes became an inconvenience, half removed, discarded wherever they landed. Skin met skin, hot and real and wanted. Soryan's control frayed completely. Every touch careful only where it mattered, reverent even as it burned. Hae-won dragged his mouth along Soryan's jaw, his throat, teeth scraping just enough to make the king shudder. You're shaking, Hae-won murmured. I've been holding back for weeks, Soryan growled. Do not tease me now. Or what? Soryan answered by lifting Hae-won effortlessly and pressing him back against silk and cushions and heat, never careless, never forgetting, but very clearly done pretending he didn't want this. Hae-won laughed breathlessly. There you are. The bond flared, bright, overwhelming, sealing something that had been circling since snow and fire and almost loss. They moved together, uncoordinated at first, then desperate, then certain. Kisses turned sloppy, mouths searching, hands learning without permission because permission had already been given. Time ceased to exist. Later, much later, Hae-won lay boneless against Soryan's chest, sweat cooling, heartbeat steady beneath his ear. Well, Hae-won said lazily, that answers several questions. Soryeon huffed a quiet laugh, fingers tracing idle, grounding patterns along Haewon's back. Did I pass? Haewon tilted his head up and kissed him, slow, satisfied, devastating. For tonight, he said, yes. Outside, the moon climbed higher. Inside, the Alpha King and the Omega who changed the Empire slept tangled together, not as ruler and subject, not as protector and vessel, but as two men who chose each other and meant it. Morning arrived without mercy. Sunlight spilled through the lattice windows of the moon court, pale gold and invasive, illuminating the aftermath of a night neither of them had survived with dignity. Soryeon woke first. This was unusual enough to be alarming. What was more alarming was the weight draped across his chest. Yoon Hae-won lay half on top of him, hair a dark spill against the king's shoulder, one leg unapologetically thrown over Soryeon's thigh like he belonged there. His breathing was slow and even, mouth slack with sleep, utterly unguarded. Soryeon did not move, he barely breathed. Oh, he thought faintly, this is my life now. Memory returned in flashes, heat, laughter, breathless murmurs, the way Hae-won had looked at him like Soryeon was not a king but a man worth choosing. The bond pulsed, warm, settled, smug. Soryeon closed his eyes. I'm ruined, he whispered. Hae-won hummed in his sleep and tightened his hold. You're staring. Soryeon startled. Hae-won's eyes were open now, sharp and amused despite the sleep, softness clinging to him. I was assessing damage, Soryeon said gravely. And? Hae-won asked. Soryeon glanced down at the tangled sheets, the discarded robes, the very clear evidence of a night that would haunt poets. Extensive. Hae-won laughed, a low, pleased sound, and pushed himself up slightly, bracing a hand on Soryeon's chest. Good, he said. I'd hate for it to be forgettable, Soryeon groaned. You are impossible. You're the one who invited me to stay, Hae-won replied sweetly. I did not. You absolutely did, Hae-won cut in. Right after you said my name like it was a prayer. Soryeon covered his face with one hand. This will be used against me. Oh, definitely, Hae-won said cheerfully. I plan to weaponize it. Reality knocked shortly after, literally. A court attendant stood rigid at the door, eyes fixed firmly on the floor as she delivered the morning report in a voice that suggested she had seen everything and would never emotionally recover. The council is in uproar, she said. 3 noble houses have formally protested the conclave ruling. The Eastern Dukes are calling for an emergency session. And the princesses, she hesitated. Yes? Soryeon prompted. They are displeased. Hae-won snorted. Of course they are. Soryeon reached out without thinking, fingers brushing Hae-won's wrist. Brief, grounding, intimate. I can send you away, he said quietly. Just for today. Let me absorb the worst of it. Hae-won looked at him for a long moment. Then he smiled. But it wasn't teasing this time. No, he said. We face this together. The bond warmed in approval. Soryeon nodded once. Then stay close. I plan to, Hae-won replied. You're very bad at lying without me. By noon, the palace was buzzing like a disturbed hive. Whispers chased them through corridors. Stares followed. Scandal thickened the air. When Yoon Hae-won entered the council chamber beside the king, head high, posture unbowed, the room fell into stunned silence. One noble whispered too loudly, he's not even hiding him. Hae-won turned, smiling pleasantly. Why would he asked. I'm not a secret. Soryeon nearly smiled, That evening, when the doors finally closed again and the weight of the day settled into their bones, Soryeon poured wine with unsteady hands. They're going to test us, he said. Relentlessly. Hae-won took the cup, fingers brushing his. Let them, he said. Empires don't fall because of love. Soryeon met his gaze. They fall because they refuse to change. Hae-won clinked his cup gently against Soryeon's. To inconvenience, he said. Soryeon laughed, soft, real. Outside, the palace braced for unrest. Inside, something steadier was forming. Not reckless passion, not naive hope, but partnership, and that, more than any scandal, terrified the empire most of all. They came for him together, not in silk-draped pageantry or staged politeness, but in the old solar chamber, where queens had once been educated and later forgotten. 7 princesses, 7 daughters of powerful houses, 7 women who had been raised to believe the crown would someday belong to their blood. Yoon Hae-won entered alone. No guard, no king at his side. That alone unsettled them. Princess Yura spoke first. She always did, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued. "So," she said, folding her arms, "you finally decided to face us." Haewon inclined his head politely. "I was invited," Princess Minseo scoffed. "Don't pretend humility now. You've already taken everything." Haewon's gaze flicked to her, cool, assessing. "Everything?" he echoed. "I seem to recall you still have your titles, your lands, your freedom." Princess Era laughed bitterly. "And yet you carry the heir." Silence fell. That word, heir, sat heavy between them. Haewon rested his hands calmly over his abdomen. "Yes," he said. "I do." Princess Hwayoung stepped forward, eyes blazing. "Do you know what we were raised for?" she demanded. "What we were promised?" "I imagine," Haewon replied evenly. "You were promised importance in exchange for obedience. That landed harder than any insult." Princess Yura's voice sharpened. "You think you're different?" "No," Haewon said. "I know I am." They bristled. "You slept your way into power," Minseo snapped. Haewon smiled, small, razor-edged. "If that were true," he said, "you'd have succeeded long before me." The room erupted. "How dare you? You're an Omega. You corrupted him." Haewon raised his hand. They fell silent without understanding why. "Listen to yourselves," he said quietly. "You speak of corruption as if the system wasn't already rotting." Princess Era's voice trembled. "We tried. We endured. We did everything right." Haewon's expression softened, not with pity but recognition. "I believe you," he said. "That stopped them." "I believe you were loyal," he continued. "I believe you were patient. I believe you were used." Princess Yura swallowed. "Then why you?" she whispered. Haewon met her gaze steadily. "Because I refuse to be," he said. The truth settled slowly, uncomfortable, inconvenient. Princess Hwayoung exhaled sharply. "So what now? We bow to you?" Haewon shook his head. "No," he said. "You decide who you want to be after the lie breaks." Princess Minseo frowned. "And the king?" Haewon's jaw tightened, just slightly. "He is learning," he said, "and I do not belong to him." That mattered more than any declaration of power. Princess Yura laughed softly. "You're dangerous." Haewon smiled. "I know." When Haewon left the chamber, the princesses remained behind, fractured, furious, uncertain, but no longer united against him. Outside, Soryeon waited. "You didn't need to come alone," the king said quietly. Haewon looked up at him. "I did," he replied. "If they're going to hate me, let them hate me. Not the idea of you protecting me." Soryeon studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I will stand beside you," he said, "but I won't stand in front of you." Haewon smiled, tired, satisfied. "Good," he said. "I'd hate to trip over you while changing history." Above them, the palace whispered. Below them, the empire shifted. Because 7 princesses had just realized the truth, the problem was never Yoon Hae-won, it was the throne. The first warning came too late. Yoon Hae-won felt it before he saw it. A sudden spike of wrongness, the bond flaring sharp and urgent in his chest like a scream without sound. "Move!" He turned, steel flashed. The dagger missed his throat by inches, slicing instead through the sleeve of his robe. Fabric tore, gasps echoed. Chaos detonated, guards surged, courtiers screamed. Someone knocked over a brazier, and embers scattered across the marble like dying stars. "Hae-won!" Soryeon's voice cracked through the hall. Not a command, not a king's roar, but something raw and terrified. The assassin didn't hesitate. They never did. Hae-won ducked under a second strike, heart pounding but mind terrifyingly clear. So this is how they chose to speak. He grabbed the assassin's wrist. Not strong enough to overpower, but precise enough to redirect. The blade clattered across the floor. The attacker snarled. "You should have stayed invisible." Hae-won smiled. "That was never my talent." A guard slammed into the assassin from behind, driving them to the ground. Another blade flashed from the crowd. Too many. This wasn't a lone zealot. It was a message. Soryeon reached Hae-won then, hands gripping his shoulders hard enough to hurt. "Are you injured?" he demanded. "Not yet," Hae-won said, breathless. "But they won't stop." As if summoned by his words, smoke bloomed near the eastern columns. Poison. The nobles panicked, and above it all, laughter rang out. Princess Minseo stepped forward from the shadows, eyes bright with something unhinged. "You thought words would save you?" she called. "You humiliated us. Undermined everything." Soryeon went still. Minseo, he said coldly. Stand down. She laughed. You chose him over the empire. No, Haewon said clearly. He chose the truth over comfort. Minseo's gaze snapped to him. You don't get to preach. Haewon stepped forward despite Soryon's grip. I get to survive, he said. And so does my child. That did it. The remaining assassins moved at once. What followed was not elegant. It was fast, brutal, desperate. Soryon shifted fully into command, barking orders, scent flooding the hall, dominance not to control, but to protect. Guards responded instantly, forming a living wall around Haewon. An assassin broke through anyway, too close. Soryon didn't think. He moved. The blade meant for Haewon sank into the king's shoulder instead. Time stopped. Hang. Haewon caught him as Soryon staggered, blood dark against white ceremonial robes. The sight of it snapped something inside him. Enough, Haewon said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Guards froze. Nobles stared. Even Minseo faltered. You wanted a symbol? Haewon continued, eyes blazing. Congratulations. He turned slowly, letting them see the blood, the bond pulsing visible between him and the king, undeniable. Every drop spilled here is on you, he said, and I will remember. The last assassin was taken down moments later. Minseo collapsed to her knees. The coup died there, messy, public, final. Later, behind locked doors and sworn silence, Haewon pressed trembling hands to Soryon's wound while physicians worked. You idiot, Haewon whispered, voice breaking despite himself. You absolute, Soryon smiled faintly. Worth it. Haewon's eyes burned. You don't get to be expendable, he said fiercely. Not to me. Soryon reached up, catching his wrist. Then don't be either, he replied. Promise me. Haewon swallowed. I promise, he said. But they've declared war. Soryon nodded grimly. Then we end it. Outside the chamber, the palace whispered again. But this time in fear, because the Empire had tried to kill Yunhei won. And failed. The palace did not sleep after blood was spilled. It watched. By dawn, the assassination attempt had already splintered into 100 versions. Some whispered, some shouted, some carefully rewritten by houses eager to survive the fallout. Yunhei won sat beside Soryon's bed, hands folded, posture calm enough to terrify the physicians. The king was alive, healing, furious about it. You're scowling, Soryon murmured weakly. I'm counting enemies, Haewon replied. Try not to move, it ruins my math. Soryon huffed a laugh and winced immediately. The doors opened without ceremony. 3 figures entered. The first was Lord Baek Il-jun, Prime Minister of the Western Marches, an aging beta with eyes like ledgers and a smile that never reached them. He had survived 4 kings by never choosing a side too early. The second was General Seo Rin, an alpha woman in black armor, scars openly worn, commander of the Northern Legions. She bowed only to Soryon, and only because she respected strength. The third made the room go very still. Monk Hua Jin of the Silver Moon Temple, an Omega, male, marked with ritual scars along his throat. Yun's fingers tightened, so the rumors were true. We are here, Lord Baek said smoothly, because the attempt on His Majesty's life has activated several dormant clauses. Haewon looked up. Explain, Baek smiled thinly. Succession contingencies, emergency councils, and his gaze flicked briefly to Yun's abdomen. Ancient precedents. Monk Hua Jin stepped forward, voice calm as falling ash. The Moon Temple recognizes the child, he said, but not without conditions. Soryon stirred. You dare. I dare because your ancestors begged us to, Hua Jin replied evenly. When the first male Omega conceived during the Age of War, the Empire nearly tore itself apart. Yun met the monk's gaze sharply. And what happened? They hid him, Hua Jin said, and the lie rotted the throne from within. Silence rang. General Seo Rin crossed her arms. So what's different now? Hua Jin looked directly at Yun. This one refuses to disappear. A smile tugged at Yun's mouth. Correct. The plots began to stack. Lord Baek revealed that 3 noble houses were quietly mobilizing private armies for protection. General Seo reported unrest in the north, soldiers swearing loyalty not to the crown, but to stability. And Monk Hua Jin dropped the final stone. The Moon Temple will demand a public right, he said, recognition, binding. Not marriage, but acknowledgement. Soryon struggled to sit up. You want to parade him? I want to protect him, Hua Jin corrected. Secrets make easy targets. Yun exhaled slowly, and if I refuse, Hua Jin inclined his head. Then others will decide your story for you. That decided it. Yun stood. The room stilled immediately. No, he said calmly. We do this my way. Everyone watched him now. I will not be hidden, Yun continued. I will not be sanctified into a symbol that can be weaponized, and I will not let fear dictate how my child enters this world. He turned to General Seo Rin. You want stability? She nodded slowly. I want soldiers who know who they're dying for. Yun looked at Lord Baek. You want survival? Baek's smile sharpened. I want inevitability. Yun finally faced Monk Hua Jin. And you, he said softly. You want history to stop repeating. The monk bowed. Yes. Yun placed a hand over his abdomen. Then, here is the new order, he said. There will be a public council, not of nobles, but of regions. Military, temple, trade. No hidden blades, gasps. The child will be recognized not as a miracle, Yun continued, but as a consequence of choice, consent, and change. Soryun watched him like he was seeing the future unfold in real time. And anyone who attempts to claim my body, my child, or my will, Yun finished quietly, will be named an enemy of the crown. Silence. Then General Seo Rin knelt. My legions will hold the capital, she said. Lord Baek chuckled softly. Ah, he said. So that's how the world ends. Hua Jin smiled, sad and reverent. No, he said. That's how it begins again. Later, when they were finally alone, Soryun reached for Yun's hand. You terrify them, he said fondly. Yun squeezed back. Good. Soryun hesitated. You're building something dangerous. Yun leaned down, pressing his forehead to Soryun's. So are you, he whispered. I just refuse to pretend it's not worth it. Outside bells rang, not an alarm but announcement. The Empire had new players now, and none of them knew yet that Yunhai 1 was only getting started. They built the council platform in the open square, not inside marble halls, not behind ancestral doors, in the city's oldest heart, where merchants shouted prices, children ran barefoot, and soldiers once swore loyalty before marching to war. By Yunhai 1's order, the nobles hated it, which was how everyone knew it was working. The crowd gathered before dawn, alphas, betas, omegas, soldiers in worn armor, priests in moon-white robes, traders with ink-stained hands, mothers holding children on their hips. This was not a court. This was the Empire breathing. Soryun stood at the center, wounded arm bound but posture unbowed. General Seo Rin flanked the platform with steel discipline. Monk Hua Jin waited to the side, expression unreadable. And then, Yunhai 1 stepped forward. No crown, no veil, just a dark robe, loose enough to show the gentle curve of pregnancy, fitted enough to make the statement unavoidable. The square went silent. Lord Baek opened the council formally, voice amplified by magic stones. This assembly recognizes Yunhai 1, he announced, as consort by choice, partner by declaration, and bearer of a legitimate royal heir. A ripple moved through the crowd. Not outrage. Awe. Someone knelt, then another, not commanded, chosen. Yun did not acknowledge it immediately. He waited until the movement stilled. Stand, he said calmly. They did. Power hum. The first challenge came sooner than expected. A man stepped forward from the Eastern delegation, tall, golden-eyed, alpha-scent sharp as cut metal. Prince Kang Tae-jin, cousin to the king, warlord of the Eastern Reach, and very much alive, despite being reported missing for years. Murmurs surged. Soryun's jaw tightened. Tae-jin, cousin, Tae-jin replied with a sharp smile. His gaze slid to Yun, calculating, intrigued. So the rumors were true. Yun met his stare without flinching. Careful, Yun said mildly. You're staring like a man who mistakes interest for entitlement. The crowd gasped. Tae-jin laughed. I like him, Soryun did not. I challenge the council's direction, Tae-jin announced loudly. Not the child, but the path. You gamble stability on sentiment. General Seo Rin stepped forward. Watch your mouth. Tae-jin raised a brow. Or what? Yun lifted a hand. Seo Rin stopped instantly. Yun addressed Tae-jin directly. You didn't come here to debate philosophy, he said. Say what you want. Tae-jin's smile sharpened. Very well. He turned to the crowd. I claim that the Empire is weakest when it confuses softness for progress, and that was when the arrow flew. It came from the rooftops. Fast, silent, deadly, aimed not at the king, but at Yun. Soryun moved without thought. So did General Seo, so did Yun. The arrow shattered mid-air, caught by a sudden flare of silver light as Monkhwa Jin slammed his staff into the ground. Protective wards screamed to life, chaos erupted, more arrows followed, screams, panic, guards surging. Shield the platform, Seo Rin roared, Tae-jin swore violently. This wasn't my... Save it, Yun snapped. He stepped forward, into the chaos. Stop. His voice cut through the square like a blade. The attackers hesitated. That was their mistake. Yun raised his hand, and the Moon Temple wards responded to him. Silver light wrapped the platform, expanding outward, revealing hidden figures on rooftops, in alleys, behind banners, assassins, dozens. The crowd stared. Monkhwa Jin whispered, stunned. He shouldn't be able to. Yun didn't look back. You wanted me afraid, Yun said, voice carrying unnaturally far. You wanted me hidden. He met the eyes of the nearest assassin. You should have learned by now, he said quietly. I don't disappear. Guards moved. The threat was neutralized swiftly, brutally, publicly. Afterward, the square was wrecked. Stones cracked, banners torn, blood staining the edges of history. Prince Tae-jin knelt before the platform, jaw tight. I swear, he said, this was not my doing. Yun studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I believe you. Soryun stared. You, what? Because if he wanted me dead, Yun continued calmly, he wouldn't have missed. Tae-jin exhaled sharply, half laughter, half relief. Well, he said, looking up at Yun with new respect, that's terrifying. Yun smiled. Good. The council concluded at sunset, not with peace, but with alignment. The military pledged order, the temple pledged transparency, the people pledged attention, and the nobles, they learned something vital. Later, as dusk bled purple across the sky, Soryun took Yun's hand. You could have died, he said hoarsely. Yun squeezed back. So could the future. Soryun swallowed. You're changing everything. Yun looked out over the city, their city now. No, he said softly. I'm making it honest. Above them, the moon rose, full, bright, unignorable. And somewhere in the shadows, enemies took notes. Because Yun Hae-won had just proven one thing beyond doubt. He wasn't just carrying the future. He was leading it. Prince Kang Tae-jin did not leave the capital. That was the first problem. The second was that he requested a private audience, with both of you. The messenger added, voice tight. He insists. Yun Hae-won raised a brow. How polite of him. Soryun looked less amused. He has never insisted on anything without a reason. Then let's hear it, Yun said calmly. I dislike mysteries that think they're clever. They met in the winter strategy room, a space built for wars that never officially happened. Maps lined the walls. Old battle plans slept under glass. The air smelled faintly of ink and iron. Tae-jin arrived unarmed, which, somehow, made him more dangerous. He bowed, not deeply, not mockingly. Just enough to acknowledge the shift in power. You're impressive, he said to Yun without preamble. That ward display? Half the temple will be arguing doctrine for years, Yun smiled faintly. I do enjoy disrupting institutions. Soryun crossed his arms. You didn't come to flatter him? No, Tae-jin agreed. I came to warn you. That got their attention. The assassins weren't nobles, Tae-jin said, pacing slowly. They were funded through shell houses, old money, routed through foreign trade guilds. Which ones? Yun asked. Tae-jin stopped. That's the interesting part. He looked directly at Soryun. Guilds loyal to your mother's line. The room went cold. That's impossible, Soryun said sharply. Tae-jin shrugged. So was a male Omega commanding moon wards. And yet, Yun's gaze sharpened. Say it plainly, Tae-jin did. There's a faction that believes the throne should burn rather than change, he said. They don't want me as king. They don't want you as king. He met Yun's eyes. They want a reset. Silence stretched. Yun broke it first. Why tell us? Tae-jin's smile turned wry. Because if the empire collapses, my territories burn first. I prefer my disasters controlled. Soryun scoffed. You expect us to trust you? No, Tae-jin replied easily. I expect you to use me. That made Yun laugh. A real laugh. I like him, Yun said again. Soryun sighed. Of course you do. They spread the maps, borders, trade routes, old alliances long thought dormant. Tae-jin proved his worth quickly. Sharp mind, ruthless clarity, no illusions about honor when survival was at stake. The princesses were a distraction, he said. Useful, emotional, loud. And you? Yoon asked. What are you? Tae-jin considered. A blade without a sheath, Yoon nodded thoughtfully. Dangerous, but effective. Soryeon watched the exchange with a tight chest, because this was what it looked like when Yoon chose allies, not with fear, with precision. When the meeting ended, Tae-jin lingered at the door. One more thing, he said. Yoon looked up. Careful, you've used your allowance of ominous warnings. Tae-jin's gaze softened, just slightly. The temple isn't confused about you, he said quietly. They're afraid. Yoon's smile faded. Why? Because the last time someone like you was born, Tae-jin continued, the empire rewrote itself in blood. Soryeon stiffened. Who? Tae-jin shook his head. That name was erased. Then he straightened, the moment gone. Good luck, he said lightly. You're going to need enemies who think they understand you. And he left. Later that night, Yoon stood at the window, fingers absently tracing the glass. You're thinking too loudly, Soryeon said gently. Yoon glanced back. Am I? Yes, Soryeon replied. You only do that when you're scared. Yoon went still, then, honest, quiet. I don't know what I am yet. Soryeon crossed the room and took his hands. Then we find out together, he said. No myths, no temples, just truth. Yoon leaned into him, resting his forehead against Soryeon's chest. Promise me something, Yoon murmured. Anything. If I become something terrifying, Yoon said softly, don't worship me. Soryeon held him tighter. I won't, he said. I'll argue with you. Yoon smiled. Small, real. Good, he said. I'd hate to rule alone. Outside, the moon waned slightly. Inside, alliances shifted, and somewhere between knife and crown, Yoon Hae-won continued to change the shape of power, one choice at a time. The Silver Moon Temple did not invite visitors lightly, so when Monk Hwa-jin requested Yoon Hae-won's presence alone, the request felt less like courtesy and more like a test. Soryeon objected immediately. You will not go without protection. Yoon adjusted his cloak calmly. I'm not going unprotected. That's not the same thing. Soryeon snapped. Yoon stepped close, lowering his voice. If they want to measure me, they won't do it honestly with you in the room. Soryeon clenched his jaw. Come back, he said. Yoon smiled softly. Always. The inner sanctum of the temple was older than the capital. No gold, no finery, only moonstone walls etched with symbols so ancient they barely resembled language. Hwa-jin waited alone. You felt it, the monk said as Yoon entered. The wards answered you without instruction. Yes, Yoon replied. And you're here to tell me why? Hwa-jin inclined his head. Because the temple failed once before. He turned and gestured. The wall shimmered. A hidden mural revealed itself. It depicted a man, an Omega, male, standing before a kneeling king. Silver light poured from his hands. Behind him, fire, cities breaking, crowns shattered. Below the image was a single word, scratched so deeply it scarred the stone. Hae-rin. Yoon's breath left him slowly. That's my ancestor, Hwa-jin said, or what remained of him in the records. Yoon stepped closer. The face was wrong, too familiar. Why does he look like me? Hwa-jin's voice went quiet. Because power repeats when it's unresolved. Hae-rin was called the Moon Bearer, the monk continued. He conceived during an age of conquest. His child was meant to unite rival bloodlines. Yoon swallowed. And instead, the nobles panicked. The temple hesitated. The king tried to protect him by hiding him. Hwa-jin's hands curled slowly. Hae-rin vanished. Officially, unofficially, he was erased. Yoon's chest tightened. And the empire? Collapsed into 50 years of war, Hwa-jin said simply. Until history was rewritten to pretend it never happened. Silence rang like a bell. Why tell me now? Yoon asked. Because you are doing what he was never allowed to, Hwa-jin replied. You are visible. Yoon laughed quietly. No humor in it. And that's supposed to end better? Hwa-jin met his gaze steadily. Only if you survive long enough to finish it. Yoon looked back at the mural, at the erased name, at the warning carved into stone. What do you want from me? Yoon asked. Hwa-jin bowed, deeply this time. Do not let us hide you again, he said, even if we beg. When Yoon returned to the palace, Soryeon was waiting in the courtyard like a man holding his breath too long. You look like you saw a ghost, Soryan said. Worse, Yun replied. He told him everything. The name, the mural, the erased Omega. Soryan went pale. They killed him, he whispered. They erased him, Yun corrected. Which is worse? Soryan took Yun's hands, grounding, fierce. I won't let that happen to you. Yun searched his face. I believe you, he said, but belief isn't enough this time. Soryan nodded slowly. Then we make it impossible. That night, Yun dreamed, not of fire, but of standing beneath a silver moon, holding a child while voices screamed for him to disappear. He woke with a hand over his abdomen, heart racing, and with a certainty settling deep in his bones. He was not the first, but he would be the last. Outside, the temple bells rang once, a warning, a promise, and far from the capital, unseen forces began to move, drawn not to a crown, but to a name history had failed to bury twice. The palace was quiet, too quiet. Soryan leaned against the balcony, eyes dark with exhaustion, the weight of the day, and the Empire pressing against him. Yunhei-1 appeared silently behind him, fingers brushing Soryan's shoulder. You're tense, Yun murmured. I'm always tense, Soryan snapped, but his voice cracked. Yun chuckled softly, leaning close so that Soryan could feel the warmth radiating off him. No, not always. Just when I'm near you. Soryan didn't answer. Instead, he spun Yun around, gripping him hard enough to press him flush against the cold stone wall of the balcony. Their breaths collided, heavy, mingling, hot. You're reckless, Soryan growled, his hands dragging over Yun's robes, tugging him closer, teeth brushing Yun's jaw. Do you know what that does to me? Yun smirked, lips brushing Soryan's. I don't want to know. I want to show you. And then they collided, not gentle, not polite. A kiss like a storm, mouths fighting for dominance, teeth snapping, breaths ragged, hearts hammering against each other. Hands tangled in robes, gripping, pulling, claiming. Every barrier between them disappeared in the heat of desire. Soryan's hands roamed with dangerous precision, leaving fiery trails across Yun's body. Yun arched into him, lips parting, moans low and sharp, and the bond pulsed, wild, insistent, unrestrained. They broke apart just enough to breathe, foreheads pressed together. You're impossible, Soryan gasped, voice hoarse. I'm yours, Yun whispered, and that single admission made Soryan shiver. Then the king kissed him again. Long, deep, demanding. A kiss that spoke of possession and worship all at once. Hands pressed, bodies crushed together. A silent confession that they needed each other more than the world, more than the crown, more than control. By the time the doors were closed and the hall silent, they were tangled on the chaise in Soryan's chambers. Sweat slicked, gasping, hearts racing. Every touch, every gasp, every stolen moment screamed, we are alive, we are here, and we are unstoppable. Soryan pressed his forehead to Yun's, voice low and rough. You have no idea how much I want you. Yun smiled, wicked and satisfied. You'll find out. The Empire could wait. Tonight, there were no politics, no threats, no assassins. Only fire, only heat, only the dangerous, intoxicating bond between them. Outside, the moon shone high, bearing witness to two men who burned for each other without apology. The morning light did nothing to cool the capital. Rumors of last night's intimacy had already spread through the palace like wildfire. Courtiers whispered in corners, faces pale, eyes wide. Some gossiped, some plotted. All were terrified. Yunhei-1 moved through it like a shadow of calm fire, holding Soryan's hand just slightly tighter than propriety would allow. Every glance, every subtle touch was a declaration. I am not yours to hide. The public courtyard was packed for the Council of Oversight. Nobles from distant provinces, masked with etiquette and scent, waited to challenge, question, or overthrow. Prince Taejin stood off to the side, arms crossed, observing Yun like a predator studying prey. Though whether he admired him or wanted to dismantle him entirely was unclear. Careful, Soryan murmured as they walked side by side. His arm brushed Yun's intentionally, sending a shiver down both of their spines. They've already labeled you dangerous. Good, Yun whispered back, lips brushing Soryan's ear. Let them think so. Let them fear what they cannot touch. Soryan stiffened, desire and warning both tangled in his gaze. And what if they try? Yun smirked. Then I show them exactly what happens when someone tries to control me. The first challenge came from Lady Minseo, one of the 7 princesses who had survived the failed assassination attempt. She stepped forward, voice sweet, sharp, dangerous. "You parade yourself with the king," she said, eyes flicking to Soryeon, then Yoon, a male Omega, openly flaunting the throne. "Do you understand the chaos you invite?" Yoon's gaze flicked to her slowly. "Calm, dangerous, electric. I invite nothing," he said evenly. "I am the chaos. And I've always been in charge of it." A murmur ran through the assembly. Soryeon's fingers brushed the small of Yoon's back under his robes, a silent, possessive gesture that left no doubt who Yoon belonged to, even in public. Even with the Empire watching, Minseo faltered. Yoon's presence radiated authority, danger, and allure all at once. The council erupted into chaos. Nobles shouted, guards surged. Taejin moved like a shadow between them, hands ready to intervene, but he didn't. Not yet. Yoon leaned close to Soryeon, whispering just enough for the king alone to hear. "They're scared," he said. "I like that." Soryeon pressed his lips to Yoon's temple, voice low and rough. "You enjoy being dangerous too much. I enjoy being desired too much," Yoon replied, a faint smirk in his voice. The tension between them was palpable to anyone who dared glance, and the council noticed. Gasps, whispers. The subtle power of 2 men who owned each other without apology rippled across the courtyard. Later, when the council disbanded and the city fell into uneasy quiet, Soryeon led Yoon through the private corridors of the palace, pressing him against the wall, lips immediately capturing his in a desperate, heated kiss. "This isn't the time," Soryeon breathed, voice rough with want. "I don't care," Yoon murmured back, hands tangling in the king's robes. "I don't care about the Empire right now. I care about you." Their mouths collided again, violent, messy, consuming. Soryeon groaned, pressing Yoon harder against the wall, teeth grazing the other's jaw, pulling him impossibly close. Every inch of exposed skin burned with want. Yoon laughed breathlessly against Soryeon's lips, voice low, teasing, dripping with control. "You're going to regret leaving me alone tonight." Soryeon's answer was a growl against his mouth, one hand at Yoon's nape, the other pulling him flush against his chest. The bond pulsed with shared heat, desire, and power. They were unstoppable together. When they finally broke apart, gasping, foreheads pressed together, the palace outside remained unaware of the fire burning behind closed doors, a fire that was only beginning to ignite. Later, Yoon rested against Soryeon's chest, still trembling slightly from their private storm. "You're insane," Soryeon murmured, hand rubbing circles over his back. "And you love it," Yoon replied softly, pressing a lingering kiss to his jaw. Soryeon's fingers tightened around him. "I might just die before anyone else dares to touch you." Yoon smiled wickedly. "Then make sure no one does. But you can." Outside, the moon rose high, watching over the Empire, but it also watched the 2 men who dared to burn hotter than politics, assassins, or centuries of tradition, and it knew nothing would ever be the same. The Silver Moon Temple had sent word. The elder monks were divided. Some hailed Yoon as a savior, the prophesied moonbearer reborn. Others whispered that his presence threatened centuries of tradition, that a male Omega with influence over the sacred wards was a danger no crown could survive. Soryeon and Yoon met in the quiet of the Moon Court Library, surrounded by dusted tomes and faint candlelight. "They're fracturing," Soryeon said, voice low and tense. "Half of them worship you, the other half would happily see you erased." Yoon leaned back in his chair, hands resting lightly over his abdomen, gaze sharp. "Let them try. They'll learn the hard way why I never vanish." Soryeon's hand brushed over Yoon's, thumb circling absently, grounding both of them. "And you think we can survive this without losing more than just allies?" Yoon smiled faintly, a dangerous glint in his dark eyes. "We already lost the past. Now we decide the future." The next day, Prince Taejin arrived in the capital with a retinue of his own, alpha warriors from the Eastern Reach. His arrival caused a stir. The nobles whispered, some prayed, others sharpened knives. Soryeon's hand rested over Yoon's as they walked toward the courtyard to meet Taejin. "You're calm," Soryeon noted, narrowing his eyes. "I'm not calm," Yoon replied, voice low, almost a purr. "I'm enjoying the chaos." Soryeon clenched his jaw. "You have a strange definition of enjoyment." Yoon leaned closer, lips brushing the king's ear. "It's very private." Soryeon shivered, aware of the silent heat pulsing between them, and of how exposed they were under the gaze of the entire capital. Tae-jin approached, smile predatory yet amused. Yoon-hae-won, he said, voice smooth. You're becoming difficult to ignore. Yoon's gaze met his, unflinching. And you're becoming predictable. Soryeon's hand tightened around Yoon's, possessive, warning. Tae-jin noticed, but didn't flinch. He seemed almost entertained. I didn't come here to fight, Tae-jin said finally. I came to offer an alliance, and a warning. Go on, Yoon said, folding his arms, tone teasing yet sharp. There are factions, Tae-jin said, lowering his voice. Old bloodlines that will not bend. They've begun plotting. If you don't move first, they'll take the capital before the moon rises again. Soryeon's eyes flicked to Yoon. He's right. Yoon's lips curved into a wicked smile. Then we move first, but we play our way. All of it, every last one of them. Later that night, the palace was quiet, or at least, it seemed quiet. Soryeon found Yoon in the private chambers, pacing softly, mind alight with strategies and threats. You've been thinking too hard, Soryeon said, wrapping his arms around Yoon from behind, pressing chest to back, lips brushing the neck. Yoon froze, shivering at the contact. I haven't thought about you at all, he said, voice low and teasing. Not strategically. Soryeon's hands traced over Yoon's arms, fingers brushing the tense muscles beneath silk. That's a mistake, he said, voice rough. Yoon turned in his arms, capturing Soryeon's lips in a slow, heated kiss. Every stress, every political threat melted against the heat between them. Then fix it, Yoon whispered against his mouth, hands tangling in Soryeon's robes. Make me forget everything but you, Soryeon groaned, pressing him closer, bodies flush, breathless, desperate. Their kisses were messy, hot, and urgent, possessive, claiming, leaving no doubt of ownership and need. Too public, Soryeon murmured, voice low, harsh with want. Doesn't matter, Yoon said, eyes dark, teeth grazing Soryeon's jaw. I've survived worse threats than propriety. And so have you. They collapsed onto the chaise, bodies tangled, hands exploring, the bond pulsing with electricity. The palace could burn, assassins could lurk, nobles could plot. None of it mattered, not now, not tonight. They moved together like a storm, hungry, relentless, entirely lost to each other. Hours later, sweat slicked and exhausted, Soryeon held Yoon close, murmuring, We can't let them know we're this. Vulnerable. Yoon smiled faintly against his chest. Let them assume whatever they like. I don't hide from you. The Empire could wait. Tonight, the world shrank to the heat and possession between them, and far above the moon watched, full, bright, and aware that two men were rewriting the rules of power, one pulse, one kiss, one claim at a time. The palace smelled of rain and smoke. A minor explosion in the eastern kitchens, probably sabotage. Guards were investigating. Courtiers whispered behind curtains. And yet, inside the private chambers, Yoon-hae-won was quiet, seated, hands over his slightly swollen abdomen, deep in thought. Soryeon entered, tension coiled in every step. Something's wrong, he said, voice low, scanning the room. Yoon looked up, eyes dark. I know. The temple had sent word. One of their own had broken the oath of secrecy. Someone has betrayed us, Hua Jin had warned. They've informed nobles that your child, your power, is more than politics. They call it unnatural. Yoon's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. Unnatural? Perhaps. But dangerous? That they're about to learn. Soryeon's hand went to Yoon's, brushing the curve of his abdomen. You've been hiding so much. I have to hide nothing, Yoon interrupted sharply. Not from you. Not from anyone who dares threaten me. Soryeon exhaled, tension spilling into a mix of worry and desire. He pressed a forehead to Yoon's, letting the warmth of their bond steady both of them. We face it together. Always. By the afternoon, betrayal took form. A letter slipped into the king's hands during the council, a whisper of rebellion from the northern nobles. The signature was unmistakable, one of Soryeon's trusted advisors. They knew, Soryeon said, jaw tight. They knew and still wrote it. Yoon took the letter, eyes scanning the words. Rage and calculation blended in his expression. Then they will see exactly why I am not to be underestimated. Soryeon watched him, mesmerized by the mix of calm and storm in Yoon. I don't think I've ever been this in awe of you before, Yun's smirk was sharp, teeth grazing Soryun's jaw. "Good," he whispered, "because soon they'll fear me too." The betrayal gnawed at the edges of the court. Northern nobles withdrew support from the king. Princess Minseo openly opposed Yun in a public speech, claiming the child could destabilize the throne. Even Taejin, careful and calculating, raised questions about loyalties within his Eastern Reach forces. Soryun, however, stood steadfast. His arm brushed Yun's whenever possible, a small constant reminder that the king's loyalty was absolute, his possessiveness sharp and immediate. Yun, in turn, pressed against Soryun's side in private moments, soft touches over the curve of his abdomen, lingering kisses, whispered reminders of the desire and bond that no betrayal could touch. That evening, when the palace was silent save for the storm outside, Soryun found Yun in their chambers, pacing. "Stop," Soryun said, voice low, sharp. "You're not alone." Yun turned, eyes dark, desire and tension flaring. "I can't hide it," he murmured, voice trembling slightly from more than just anger. "Not from you, not from anyone." Soryun stepped close, pressing a hand over Yun's abdomen, another tangling in his hair. "Then let me hold you, let me protect you, let me remind you that we are stronger together." Yun leaned into him, lips brushing Soryun's neck, teeth grazing his jaw in a whisper of a warning and a promise. "Do you want to feel just how dangerous we are together?" Soryun groaned, pressing his mouth to Yun's in a heated, urgent kiss, hands gripping, bodies pressed together, breaths ragged. They moved with intent, a storm of need tempered by the knowledge that Yun's pregnancy made every motion sacred, every touch intensified. Each kiss, each press of body to body was a declaration. No betrayal, no enemy, no empire can separate us. By the end of the night, they collapsed tangled, shivering whispered vows, mingling with heavy breathing. Outside, the palace shivered under the storm and whispered betrayals. Inside, two men burned hotter than politics, threats, or enemies. And Yun pressed a hand to his abdomen, a faint smile on his lips. "Let them come. They will regret every choice." Soryun held him tight, possessive and protective. "We'll survive. Together, the empire could fracture, nobles could conspire, even the temple could falter, but they were unbreakable. Together, dangerous, pregnant, and untouchable." The palace never looked so quiet. On the surface, all was ceremonial order, guards at their posts, nobles walking the halls with polite smiles, and the emperor's banners hanging pristine in the wind. Beneath, the palace was a powder keg. Nobles loyal to the old regime had begun moving in secret, troops loyal to fractured houses, spies hiding behind silk robes, and assassins positioned where no one could see them. Soryun walked the halls with Yun close, hand always brushing his partner's back, a silent reminder that no one would reach him without encountering the king first. "Something's coming," Soryun murmured. "I can smell it." Yun pressed his hand over his abdomen, feeling the faint pulse of life inside him. "Let them try. We're not hiding anymore." The first attack came as night fell. Explosions shook the western wing. Shouts echoed through marble corridors. Guards surged, but Yun and Soryun moved faster, every step measured, every bond between them a weapon. Taejin appeared beside them from the shadows, alpha scent sharp in the night air. "You weren't exaggerating," he muttered. "They really hate you." "Good," Yun replied, voice calm despite the chaos. "Hate is predictable," Soryun growled, hand gripping Yun's. "And they'll regret it." The rebels flooded the courtyard. Nobles, soldiers, and mercenaries pressed forward, believing the king and his Omega consort could be isolated, removed, or killed. Instead, Yun stepped into the open, robes flowing, a subtle glow radiating from his form, the Moon Temple wards responding instinctively to his presence. Soryun followed, blade in hand, eyes like steel. Taejin at their flank, weapons gleaming, strategy ready. The attackers faltered. They had not counted on the bond. Yun's voice carried across the courtyard, calm and unyielding. "Anyone who moves against the throne moves against me, against him, against our child. Step back, or face the consequences." And then the wards flared, silver and sharp, forcing the rebels to hesitate, giving the loyalists the advantage. After the battle in the courtyard, the palace smelled of smoke and blood. Soryun found Yun alone in the private wing, hands still glowing faintly from the ward's power. "You pushed yourself too far," Soryun said, voice harsh and possessive, and with the child, Yun smiled wickedly, stepping close, pressing their bodies together. With the child, he murmured, lips brushing Soryon's, we can survive everything. Soryon groaned, pressing him against the wall in a mix of relief, desire, and possessiveness. You're impossible, he whispered, teeth grazing Yun's jaw. Yun's hands tangled in Soryon's hair. And you love it, he said softly. The kiss broke only briefly as they clung together, bodies pressed, hearts racing, breaths mingling. Every touch was fierce, possessive, and intimate, a promise that nothing, not rebellion, assassination, or betrayal, could separate them. Hours later, they collapsed together in the private chambers, sweat slicked, exhausted, yet still entwined. Soryon pressed his hand over Yun's abdomen, murmuring, we survived, together. And we will again? Yun smiled faintly, lips brushing the king's jaw. Let them come, he said. Every last one of them. The Empire had tested them tonight, and it had failed. Outside, the city slept uneasily, unaware that the king and his Omega consort were a force no one could break, not nobles, not assassins, not even the temple itself. Inside, heat, desire, and unbreakable bonds pulsed stronger than ever, promising that the Empire, and the child it awaited, would survive. The Silver Moon Temple was no longer a neutral power. Half of the monks openly declared loyalty to Yun, calling him the reborn Moonbearer, the childbearer destined to unify the Empire. The other half whispered venomously in shadowed corridors, questioning his legitimacy and plotting rebellion. Soryon paced beside Yun in the palace study, jaw tight, fingers brushing Yun's lightly over his abdomen. They've declared war, he said flatly. Half of the temple wants you dead. Yun's eyes narrowed, dark and playful all at once. Then we'll just have to burn them out, slowly, with style. Soryon groaned, but couldn't hide the faint shiver that ran down him at the dangerous gleam in Yun's eyes. You make me want to kill them and kiss you at the same time. Yun laughed softly. Then do both. The first confrontation came in the temple courtyard at dusk. A group of dissenting monks had gathered, chanting quietly, summoning wards meant to bind Yun. Yun stepped forward, robes flowing, silver light glinting faintly around him. Soryon at his side, protective and tense. Do you really want to do this? Soryon asked, voice low, brushing his lips briefly over Yun's temple as if transferring courage. Yun smiled faintly, hand resting protectively over his abdomen. They'll regret underestimating me, and you. The dissenters flinched as the moon wards responded instinctively to Yun's presence, flickering and pulsing with his heartbeat. The silver light washed over the courtyard, sending shivers through the monks who had thought themselves safe. After the temple confrontation, Soryon insisted Yun rest in the private chambers. You push too hard, he said, voice gruff but low with desire. And with the child, Yun cut him off, lips brushing the king's in a slow, teasing kiss. With the child, he murmured, teeth grazing Soryon's jaw, we are unstoppable. Don't forget that. Soryon's hands tightened over Yun's hips, pulling him flush, possessive. You make me forget everything else, he growled, voice rough. Yun pressed closer, hips against Soryon's, heart hammering against the king's chest. Good, he whispered, lips brushing Soryon's neck. Forget the world, forget them, forget the temple, just me. Soryon groaned, lowering his mouth to capture Yun's lips again, hands tangling in hair, pressing, claiming. The bond between them pulsed, heat, dominance, desire all woven together. Every movement, every touch was a warning. This is mine. You belong to me. They broke only to breathe, foreheads pressed together, chests rising and falling in sync. You're impossible, Soryon muttered, voice husky. And you love it, Yun replied, smirk dark and playful. The next day brought betrayal from within the palace itself. One of Soryon's most trusted advisors had been leaking information to the rebellious nobles and the dissenting temple monks. Yun's eyes darkened as he read the reports, jaw tight. They think they can manipulate me through fear, he said, voice low and dangerous. They're wrong. Soryon pressed a hand over Yun's abdomen. We'll deal with them, together. Yun smiled faintly, brushing a thumb over Soryon's knuckles. Together, he whispered, and in the quiet corner of the chamber, they held each other tight, the intensity of their bond a shield against betrayal, politics, and everything else the Empire threw at them. That night, in the privacy of their chambers, they shared a moment that was more than desire. Soryon's hands roamed possessively over Yun's body, every touch claiming, marking, asserting. Yun responded in kind, teasing, arching, whispering, half laughter, half command. Every kiss was heated, every caress electric. They moved together in a dance of hunger and protection, a symphony of longing that left both trembling and breathless. Yun pressed against Soryun, lips brushing over the king's jaw, teeth grazing, hands tangling in the robes at his back. "Promise me," he murmured, "that no one, no empire, no temple, no traitor, can ever separate us." Soryun groaned, pressing his mouth to Yun's again, voice rough, possessive. "I swear it," he whispered. "I will protect you and our child, no matter what." Outside, the moon shone full, casting silver light through the chamber. Inside, two men clung together, a storm of desire, power, and devotion, ready to face the empire and its betrayals, together, unbreakable. The capital was on edge. Word had spread of the temple's split, the rebellion of nobles, and the rumors of the king's Omega consort, who wielded power beyond anyone's comprehension. But now, after weeks of chaos, the palace had quieted, not because the threats were gone, but because they knew one truth: Yun Hae-won would not be controlled. Soryun stood beside him, hand lightly brushing Yun's back over the curve of his abdomen. "The empire trembles," he said, voice low and tense. "Do you think we can hold it all together?" Yun's gaze was steady, dark, and unflinching. "We don't just hold it," he said softly. "We shape it. And anyone who doesn't fall in line will learn exactly why it's a mistake to challenge me." Soryun pressed a kiss to Yun's temple, possessive and intimate. "And the child?" Yun smiled faintly, hand over the small swell. "The child will inherit a world we've chosen, one we've earned together." The temple's factions gathered one last time in the grand hall. The loyal monks bowed to Yun openly, calling him the Moon-bearer reborn. The dissenting monks, seeing the display of both his power and Soryun's unshakable loyalty, faltered. Hwajin, calm as ever, stepped forward. "This empire cannot survive the shadows of the past," he said, "and yet, under your guidance, it may thrive. Yun Hae-won, you are no longer hidden, you are acknowledged." A murmur swept through the hall. Yun's smile was faint, but dangerous. "Acknowledged," he repeated, voice strong, "and anyone who dares challenge that acknowledgement will answer to me and him." Soryun's hand found Yun's under the ceremonial robes, their fingers intertwined, possessive and protective, a silent promise. No one, not temple, not nobles, not enemies, could come between them. Later, in the privacy of the king's chambers, the tension melted into desire. Soryun pressed Yun against the wall, lips capturing his with hunger and relief. "We survived," he murmured, voice rough and low. "All of it," Yun responded in kind, hands tangling in Soryun's hair, pressing closer, teeth grazing his jaw, breath mixing in heavy, desperate gasps. "Together," he whispered. "Always together." The kiss deepened, messy, heated, possessive. Every touch was a claim, every sigh a declaration. Their bodies moved in sync, hearts racing, desire burning brighter than any threat the empire could throw at them. Yun pressed Soryun against him, abdomen brushing against the king's side, heat and intimacy mingling in a way that left both trembling. "No one can touch us," he murmured, lips brushing the king's ear. Soryun groaned, possessive and adoring. "No one, ever." The night stretched long. Outside, the empire slept uneasy, the threats quelled for now, the factions cowed or swayed. Inside, two men claimed each other with fire, desire, and possession, a quiet storm of intimacy that left no doubt they were untouchable. Yun rested against Soryun's chest, hand over his own, the other over the swell of the child growing inside him. "We've rewritten the rules," he whispered. Soryun pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead. "And the empire will remember who we are, together." And somewhere in the silver light of the moon, it watched, approving, as two men who had survived betrayal, rebellion, and war finally found peace, if only for a moment, together. The morning sun washed over the capital, golden and soft, yet charged with promise. The rebellion was crushed. Loyalists from both the palace and the temple had solidified Yun and Soryun's authority. Nobles who had whispered treason now bowed openly. Even the dissenting monks, humbled and awed, knelt before Yun Hae-won, acknowledging him as the reborn moon-bearer and the protector of the empire's future. Soryun stood beside him, hand entwined with Yun's, fingers pressing possessively over the curve of his partner's abdomen. "The empire is finally quiet," he said. Yun's lips curved into a dangerous, satisfied smile. Quiet doesn't last long, he replied, but it's enough, for now. The palace chambers were filled with soft candlelight. The air smelled faintly of incense, the banners of the empire swaying gently outside the tall windows. Soryeon helped Yun sit on the chaise, fingers brushing over his robes, eyes full of possessive admiration. "How are you feeling?" he asked, voice low and intimate. Yun pressed a hand over his abdomen, feeling the child's small, undeniable movements. "Stronger," he said softly. "Because of you." Soryeon leaned down, lips brushing Yun's in a lingering, heated kiss. "And I because of you," he murmured. Hands roamed possessively, drawing Yun closer. Yun's fingers threaded into Soryeon's hair, tugging gently, a silent command, a teasing warning. "I want you. Now," Soryeon growled, pressing their bodies together, teeth grazing lips, breath ragged and hot. Every touch, every brush of skin, every sigh was a declaration of possession and unbreakable bond. The rest of the world, the nobles, the temple, the empire itself, faded. Only heat, only need, only the undeniable connection between them remained. Hours passed, a storm of intimacy that left them trembling and gasping, fingers intertwined, lips locked in desperate, possessive kisses, bodies pressed together in a rhythm that was both urgent and tender. Soryeon rested his forehead against Yun's, voice low and hoarse. "We've survived everything. Now, nothing can touch us." Yun smiled, brushing Soryeon's lips with his own in a soft, lingering kiss. "Nothing," he agreed, hand over Soryeon's heart, then resting protectively on his own abdomen. Not enemies, not betrayal, not even time. Days later, the child was born. The empire watched in awe as the moon-bearer and the king's Omega produced an heir, not just a child, but a living symbol of unity, power, and love. Yun held the newborn against his chest, Soryeon at his side, hand pressed firmly and possessively over both of them. "Our future," Soryeon said, voice full of awe and desire. "Our power," Yun added, smile dangerous and tender. "Our choice, our legacy," even Prince Taejin, who had arrived with teasing, flirtatious admiration, bowed before the family, acknowledging the strength of the bond that no rival, no threat, and no faction could break. That night, the palace was quiet in a new way. Soryeon and Yun stood together on the balcony, the city of the empire spread beneath them, bathed in silver moonlight. Yun pressed a hand to Soryeon's chest, forehead against his, voice soft. "We've rewritten history." Soryeon's arms tightened around him, possessive, protective, "and we'll guard it, together, forever." Yun's other hand rested over the child sleeping in a cradle nearby. "Our family," he whispered, eyes dark with love and dangerous joy. Soryeon kissed him fiercely, tenderly, desperately, a final claim, a promise, a celebration of survival, desire, and power. Outside, the moon shone full and bright, witness to a family that had defied tradition, betrayal, and every shadow of the past. Inside, two men held each other, and their child, tightly, unbreakable, unstoppable, and untouchable. And the empire knew, at last, who truly ruled, not just a king, not just an Omega, but two hearts, one bond, and a legacy that would outlast all else. Epilogue. The palace was quieter now, but alive in a different way. Guards still patrolled, nobles still whispered, but none dared challenge the family who had rewritten the empire. Yun Hae-won stood on the balcony, the soft glow of dawn spilling over the city. His hand rested protectively on the child sleeping in a nearby cradle, eyes calm but sharp, always aware. Soryeon appeared behind him, arms sliding around Yun's waist, chin resting on his shoulder. "Still checking the empire before breakfast," he murmured, voice husky. Yun tilted his head, lips brushing Soryeon's cheek. "Someone has to make sure it stays ours." Soryeon chuckled, possessive and amused. "And what about us?" Yun smirked, turning in Soryeon's arms to press a soft, lingering kiss to his lips. "Us. Always us." In the courtyard, Taejin lounged against a pillar, arms crossed, watching the two of them with a smirk that was half amusement, half mischief. "You two are insufferably perfect." he said, voice teasing. And don't think I haven't noticed how attached you are to each other, Soryeon growled softly, pulling Yun closer, lips brushing the top of his head. Careful, Taejin. You might find yourself on the wrong end of our possessiveness. Taejin laughed, unfazed. Possessiveness, I like a little danger. Just make sure I get invited to see the kid. Yoon arched a brow, playful and wicked. Only if you promise not to steal him. Taejin grinned, mock offense on his face. Me? Steal? Never. I'm merely supervising. Later, in their private chambers, Soryeon and Yoon curled together beside the crib, the child's tiny fingers curled around Yun's thumb, eyes fluttering open, the faintest glimmer of magic in the aura surrounding him. Yun's lips brushed Soryeon's shoulder. Do you see that? Our legacy? Soryeon smiled, pressing a kiss to the top of Yun's head. Yes. And I'll protect it, every second, for the rest of my life. Starting with you. Yun's hand slid over Soryeon's chest, nails grazing skin lightly, heat sparking between them. Starting with us, you mean? Soryeon growled softly, leaning down to capture Yun's lips in a deep, possessive kiss, fingers tangling in his hair. Always us. Yun pressed closer, brushing his lips along Soryeon's jaw, whispering, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Outside, the moon rose high, silver and full, casting light over the palace, the city, the empire, and one small family who had survived everything: betrayal, war, politics, desire, and danger. Inside, 2 men, and their child, held each other close, hearts beating in unison, a perfect storm of passion, love, and power. And in the quiet, soft mischief of Taejin's teasing from the hallway, laughter filled the palace. The empire was theirs. Their child would inherit strength, magic, and a bond forged in fire. And Yoon and Soryeon, they were untouchable, forever. Extra chapter, The Shadows of the Seven. The palace was quieter than usual, the air heavy with the scent of blooming moonflowers and simmering tension. Yoon-hae won, and Soryeon walked together through the northern gardens, the child safely tucked away with the wet nurse. Soryeon's hand brushed the small of Yun's back, possessive as ever, but his mind was already racing. Reports had reached them that not all threats had been neutralized. 7, Soryeon said suddenly, voice low. Do you think the 7 princesses have truly given up? Yun's eyes darkened, lips curling into a faint, dangerous smile. They never give up. The first to appear was Princess Minseo, her expression composed, regal, but her eyes betraying her ambition. You've survived, she said, voice sweet but sharp. And yet, I wonder if the Moonbearer's air is enough to hold the empire together. Yun stepped forward, calm, radiating quiet power. Your concern is touching, Princess, but I think you'll find our bond, our family, is stronger than your doubts. Soryeon's hand slid over Yun's hip, pulling him close, and stronger than any plot you might attempt. Minseo's smile didn't falter, but her eyes glinted with quiet defiance. Plots? Oh no, Your Majesty, I have something much subtler in mind. One by one, the remaining 6 princesses emerged from the shadows. Princess Heron, the cunning strategist, always analyzing. Princess Juwon, whose silver tongue could sway an entire court. Princess Sohyun, fierce and unpredictable. Princess Nari, graceful but deadly. Princess Yojin, known for her charm that could disarm even the most cautious. And Princess Haeun, whose quiet patience masked ambition sharp as a blade. Each bowed, then straightened, eyes trained on Yun, Soryeon, and the child. You've done well, Heron said finally. But the Empire does not forgive weakness, and strength can breed unexpected consequences. Yun's hand rested over his abdomen, his voice calm but layered with warning. If you try to test us, you will see just how dangerous we can be, and you won't like it. Soryeon's hand covered Yun's over his stomach. I promise you, princesses, anyone who challenges my Omega regrets it. The princesses exchanged subtle glances, whispers passing like shadows in the moonlight. Jiwon stepped closer, voice soft, almost coaxing. Perhaps it's not about challenging you directly. Perhaps it's about undermining from within. Nari's lips curved, sharp and teasing. Or perhaps it's about waiting for the right moment, when even the Moonbearer himself cannot protect what he loves. Soryeon stiffened, protective as always, pressing Yun closer to his side. Not while I'm here. Yun's dark eyes scanned them, lips curling in a dangerous, wicked smile. Do you truly think you understand me? Or the bond we share? The princesses smiled faintly, a collective glint of ambition in their eyes. We will see, Heron said. We will see. As the princesses retreated into the shadows, leaving the garden eerily silent, Yun and Soryen lingered, bodies close, hearts still racing from the tension. You think they'll come for us? Soryen asked, fingers brushing Yun's hair. They always do, Yun murmured, lips pressing briefly to the king's temple. And next time, it won't just be threats, it will be war. Soryen's jaw tightened. Then we'll burn the world before anyone touches what's ours. Yun smiled faintly, hand resting over his abdomen. And it will be fun watching them try. From the shadows, unseen, a figure stepped forward, someone the palace had thought loyal, quiet, and forgotten. A soft, menacing voice whispered, carried on the wind. Do they truly think the Moonbearer and his king have survived everything? They haven't seen anything yet. A shadow shifted and then disappeared. The garden fell silent, but the threat lingered, closer than anyone could imagine. The end. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you loved it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more amazing content. Drop a comment with your favorite moment, and I'll see you in the next one.